very much, Pastor Weaver. Good morning, Goeiemorgen. Greeting from the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It's a joy and privilege to be here. We praise God for Brother Weaver. He's been the man we've turned to for quite a number of our books to do introductions, like Security and Survival. Couldn't think of anyone better to do the introduction for that. And our latest, which is A Case for Secession. We are Southerners, and my wife, when she's asked, "Are you a Yankee?" she said, "No, I'm a Confederate," or "I'm a rebel," would be the normal answer. She'd have the Confederate flag in the back of her car. I have Confederate flag flying from our mission flagpole every 4th of July, and also during the month when we celebrate Robert E. Lee. And our mission is enthusiastically Confederate. We've had people come to our mission and question why we have the Confederate flag on our wall. Well, we have flags of all the countries that have sent missionaries out through us, and that includes Switzerland and Austria, Britain, of course Rhodesia, the old South African flag. Sometimes people have come and said, "I notice you don't have the new South African flag up there." And I said, "No, we don't, do we?" And I'm not interested in the new beach towel or Kitty's Crown competition, multicolored piece of rubbish that they put out there for. We used to have a beautiful flag, orange, white and blue, Ranya Blanya Blow. And that's a flag we still have up. So to us, all these are part of our history and our heritage. We're not going to give it up. Karl Marx said the first battlefield is the battle over history. And his disciples have been super busy rewriting history. It's our job to preserve our history and heritage. Cancel culture is nothing other than cancel Christianity. And we must preserve our faith and preserve our heritage. That is the most important heritage we can give our children. So, our vision is Africa for Christ, and Africa has a great future, even though we've got the worst governments around. Well, we used to have the worst governments around, but I think your present Democratic resident of the White House is doing his best to try and beat Africa at that. However, the latest statistics from Operation World, which is the greatest missiology handbook in the world, it is a handbook for understanding where every country is and the needs. Patrick Johnson's been bringing out Operation Worlds for years, and it led us into launching our mission. Operation World informs us that there are now 650 million people in Africa who call themselves Christians. And that's going to double in the next 25 years. By 2050, present trends continuing, we will have 1.2 billion Christians in Africa. Now, of course, that's wonderful news in one sense, but on the other hand, it's a great problem and challenge. Most of the pastors have no Bible college training. That's not necessarily bad considering what they're teaching in a lot of Bible colleges, but we've got a worse statistic than that. 500 million churchgoers in Africa don't have a Bible or even the New Testament. 500 million. I mean, that's absolutely staggering. And so the great challenge for us now is to provide enough Bibles and books for the Christians in Africa, and that's what our mission tries to do. We are distributing 100 tons of Bibles and books every single year. Free, completely free, in about 100 languages around Africa. Frontline Fellowship's badge indicates where we stand. We are Bible-based, we are Christ-centered, we are committed to the fighting the good fight of faith, the sword of the Spirit, and we are Africa-faced. 1666 and the occultic roots of the New World disorder. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? 1666. Who's heard of Sabbateanism? Anyone? So in 1666, Sabbateanism declared himself to be the Messiah. More than half of the world's Jewish population in the 17th century came to accept and follow Zevi as their Messiah. Sabbateanism proclaimed salvation through sin. He is condemned as a heretic by many contemporary rabbis of the time. We are warned in Matthew 24 verse 4, "Take heed that no one deceives you." Our Lord Jesus said, "For many will come in my name saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will mislead many." The Lord never exaggerates. Many will be deceived. Then if anyone says to you, "Behold, here is the Christ," or "There he is," do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. Sabbateanism was born On the 1st of August, 1626, in Anatolia, what is present-day Turkey, which was once the Byzantine Empire. He was a Sephardic Jew, ordained a rabbi in Smyrna, now Izmir, Turkey, but Smyrna was where the Apostle John and Polycarp worked. Sabbatean Zevi was active throughout the Ottoman Turkish Empire, and his teaching from the Talmud and from the Kabbalah. I think many people get confused and assume, Jews are all quoting from the books of Moses and they're preaching from the Old Testament. Not so. Most are really into the Talmud and the Kabbalah. Sabbatean Zevi's message of redemption through sin was enthusiastically received by many. In fact, most people like that kind of message, and you can see the success of the prosperity preachers of today. If God is like the magic genie, he pops out and says, your wish is my command. They like that kind of God, a kind of false God who allows you to be saved through sin. Fast days became days of feasting. Sexual promiscuity, adultery, incest, and orgies, that was all part of their salvation. Zevi taught every law has to be broken. Although, to be honest, you can't break God's laws. You can only break yourself upon God's laws. God's laws are pretty rock solid. We destroy ourselves, but God's laws are there to protect us from self-destruction. Religious taboos such as forbidding the eating of pork, every form of sexual immorality, was not only permitted but encouraged. Sabbatean Zevi taught you are saved through sin. Sabbatean Zevi lived from 1626 to 1676. He is described by his contemporaries as exceptionally charismatic. He is a rabbi, he is a Kabbalist, he is an eccentric mystic. He attained a massive following. More than 1 million people were devoted to following him and his teachings during his lifetime. That's a phenomenal amount of success in a worldly sense. The publication of the Lurinic Kabbalah made Zevi extraordinarily popular in the 17th century amongst the Jewish people throughout Europe and throughout the Ottoman Empire. The Lurinic Kabbalah promoted an occultic, deeper meaning for Jewish mysticism, drawing from the ancient Babylonian occultism and numerology being significance of numbers. Sabbatean Zevi emphasized the magical, supernatural relationship between events and time, through letters and through numbers. Every letter number's got deep significance. Forget what the text is saying, there's some kind of deeper numerological meaning below it. The numerological value of dates contributed greatly to the widely held expectations and hopes of the Jewish Messiah that he would arrive on the 18th day, that's 6 plus 6 plus 6 of the 6th month of the year 1666. One eyewitness, Rabbi Leib de Ben Oza, wrote, Zevi was handsome, possessed with an enchanting presence, and with a singing voice. Many wrote, there's none like Zevi in stature. His face burned with intensity like fire. Many of his contemporaries claimed to have been converted to following Zevi when he appeared to them in dreams by the side of their beds. They would awake professing belief in him as the Messiah. No logic, no facts, no scriptural study, it's just an experience. Professor Gershom Scholem explained that a sincere expectation had arisen in the psyche of many Jews that their Messiah would come and lead them back to establishing a Jewish homeland. According to some critical interpretations of his behavior, Sabbatean Zevi showed signs of what modern scholars would call maniac depressive psychosis. He publicly displayed ecstatic behavior, often followed by bouts of depression and seclusion. However, many of his modern-day followers argue his behavior was simply what you would expect from religious mystics like the Sufi. You know, you can divide Islam into 3 branches. There's the Sunnis, which is more the Quran, the book. The Shiites, where it's all about the leader, the hierarchy. Like in many ways you'd say the Sunnis are like the Protestants of Islam. The Shiites are like the Catholics of Islam. And then you get the Sufis, who are like the charismatics of Islam. A miracle a day keeps the devil away, and who cares what the book says? The important thing is what I feel and experience in it. The Sufis are the sword-swallowing, fire-breathing, miraculous mystic tribe. Meditative dancing, trances, ecstatic dancing, that's all part of being a Sufi. Now, according to Professor Abraham Eliakim, a faculty member of the Jewish philosophy department in the Bar Ilan University in Israel, Sabbatean frequently engaged in Bektashi Sufi rituals. These are the guys who do such bizarre things as cutting your own tongue. In fact, Sabbatean Zevi's grave site in Albania remains a Sufi shrine to this day. Sufis make pilgrimages to his gravesite, so he was as much a Sufi as a Jew, it seems, at least in their minds. Zevi's socially immoral and religiously unacceptable behavior led him to being expelled from Smyrna around 1650. Not surprising. For years he wandered through Greece and Thrace and Egypt and Syria. However, in 1665, his life was changed forever when he met Rabbi Nathan in Gaza, in Palestine, who persuaded him he was indeed the Messiah, who would usher in a new age. Rabbi Nathan convinced Sabbatean Zevi he needed to formally reveal himself in the year 1666 to fulfill the Messianic prophecy which people were expecting. Now, when we speak about Messianic prophecy, we're not talking about the Bible here, we're talking about the Talmud. Zevi soon gained further support from the diaspora, the dispersed Jews, by promising the Jews a return to the homeland and a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. Although Zevi received strong support and he is very popular amongst the Jewish people, the leading rabbis in Jerusalem rejected his claims that he was their Messiah. Not surprising, good to know that there were some rabbis who still did some kind of due diligence. The rabbis of Jerusalem ordered him to leave the city or be excommunicated. I don't understand that. Why didn't they just excommunicate him and expel him from the city? This man was about as disruptive and as evil an influence as you could ever have. But Sabbatean returned to Turkey, where the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire allowed him free rein to build up a phenomenal following, which is amazing considering the Ottoman Turks were not renowned for religious tolerance. But they were very happy with Sabbatean Zevi. Jews from all over the world, from as far afield as England to Persia, from Germany to Morocco, from Poland to Yemen, they poured into the Ottoman Empire to see, to hear, to meet their Messiah. And about 1 million of them ultimately said, "This is the Messiah." However, a year after Sabbatean publicly proclaimed that the next year the temple in Jerusalem would be rebuilt, now the Sultan was suddenly galvanized into action. Now he's going too far. Fearing a revolt that would lead to this province, Palestine, declaring independence from the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan, Muhammad IV, confronted Sabbatean Zevi with a choice: either publicly convert to Islam or you will be beheaded. And as the Sultan delicately put it, your head or the turban being a symbol of converting to Islam. So what do you think Sabbatean Zevi did? It came as a shock to many of his supporters that their supposed long-awaited Messiah denounced his Jewish faith on the spot, chose to wear the Islamic turban to keep his head. Zevi publicly converted to Islam and adopted a new Muslim name, Aziz Mehmet Effendi, the power of Muhammad. From then on, Zevi was on salary as a servant of the Sultan, with the cryptic title, Keeper of the Gate. Zevi continued unabated in his Messianic activities, and he also continued to receive the full support of the Islamic authorities and from the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. While Sabbatean's formal conversion to Islam dismayed and disillusioned many of his followers, as you would imagine, many took it as a sign that they should also convert to Islam, while maintaining their Jewish identity and their mystical Kabbalah Sabbatean practices. One of these Sabbatean cults, primarily located in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, were called the Donmi, which translates to religious converts. It was a derogatory term the Muslims used, but they just Donmi, they're religious converts. But they would never call themselves Donmi, but that's what they were called by the Muslims. The Sabbatean followers explained his apparent apostasy as a descent into grossest reality, or the husks of creation, in order to reclaim the lost sparks of divine light, whatever that means. And the goal was to repair the world. These Kabbalist concepts, which are always very paradoxical, were used to justify his heretical, his apostate, his degenerate behavior. According to Reb Yaakov Leib Hakenheim, the current director of Donmi West, they are the Californian Sabbatean organization, which was founded in 1972. How amazing to think there's groups like this promptly open to this day. Sabbatean's conversion to Islam was not an act of cowardice. No. It wasn't an act of apostasy. No. It wasn't that he betrayed the Jewish people, because his conversion was one of the mystical Masim Zarin that the Messiah was destined to perform, based on their reading of the Kabbalah, which is basically, the Kabbalah came out of the exiles in Babylon, and it was as much influenced by mystical, occultic Babylonianism as it was by the Torah. And so the Kabbalah is very occultic, very degenerate, very immoral anyway, even before Sabbateanism got his paws on it and turned it into something even more bizarre. In keeping with Isaac Lurie's prophecies in the Lurian Kabbalah, these actions of breaking laws, of being a false convert, of deception, of degeneracy, these are essential to bring about the conversions, the conditions. These will set the stage, these will initiate and directly expedite the fulfillment of Jewish Messianic prophecy. Jews were to play an active role to bring about and to bring forth God's kingdom on earth. And how are they going to do this? By infiltrating, subverting, and destroying every other religion and kingdom on earth. And how can you do that without deception and being a false convert and pretending to belong to the very people you're seeking to destroy? Of course, Revelation 21 verse 8 says, "But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the sexually immoral, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars will have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." So, when the Bible makes it clear all liars will be condemned to the lake of fire, what does it say about Sabbatean? But he's the Messiah, apparently. The Kabbalah teaches a mystical synthesis between the pagan teachings which preceded the Torah and the Gnostic elements of Judaism. The task is not to destroy evil, he said, the task is to return evil to its source, whatever that means. To include the left within the right, to uplift the fallen sparks. The Chaldean or Babylonian mysticism and the occultism provide the most authentic version of the Kabbalah. Now you're beginning to wonder, is this Judaism or is this Babylonian occultism? Because they're so married together now that how can you even tell the difference? The new philosophical paradigm provided a spiritual justification for proactive Zionism to bring about the formation of a Jewish state. And this state would undermine and replace all states worldwide. The mystical Lurianic Kabbalah transformed the Messiah from a popular conquering hero to a supreme cosmic conqueror. The goal was not merely to emancipate Jews from the yoke of the Gentiles, but of fundamental transformation of the entire creation, affecting material and spiritual worlds alike. Just think of the theme of, what was it, Obama's theme for his presidency, change. We are just days away from the fundamental transformation in the United States. Remember those words? This was to lead to, in the word of Gershom Shalom, a ratification of the primordial catastrophe of the breaking of the vessels, Shivarat Hakelim, or repairing the world. The goal was to break everything down so it could be built back better. I don't know if this rings any bells, but the Great Reset, also known as Build Back Better, was the theme of a political candidate in recent political campaign, which some of you might remember. Of course, they can't build anything. Nothing's back and nothing's better, but they sure know how to break everything down. Build back better. That comes all the way back from 1666 and Sabbateanism. As somebody said, build back better is very much like 666. And the people promoting it are very much worshipping Baphomet or Satan himself. According to Sabbateanism, the acts that God's people must take include deliberate forays into the world of sin, where the illusory nature of evil could be more readily exposed and the sparks elevated to their source. Now, if this doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. It just means you're not insane. I was in a debate with a South African Germany, which is a Dutch-formed minister, and it was at Wits University, and we were debating blasphemy. And they were arguing, because everything is made in the image of God, everything is holy. And the only thing that is evil is censorship. which is symbolized by me, as the one personally opposing the blasphemy of the last temptation of Christ, which was the subject of the debate. And so, at this debate, I had a Germany, that's a minister of the gospel, a reform minister, saying pornography is made in the image of God. Pornography is part of God's image, and therefore what's blasphemous is these people like Peter Hammond who want to censor pornography, and that censorship is evil. Pornography is, like everything, is made in the image of God, therefore pornography is holy. It's censorship that is blasphemy. Does that make sense to anybody here? Well, if it doesn't, don't worry. With the declaration of Sabbateanism as the Messiah in 1666, the Zionist goal of infiltrating, subverting, ultimately replacing every other religion, every kingdom, transforming every government on earth into a new world order, that's what they called it. That became a central focus. Rabbi Nathan of Gaza declared they were entering into a new age, where all religious laws prior to Sabbateanism were essentially obsolete. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all religions are obsolete. All that matters now is the Sabbatean reality, salvation through sin. Traditional religious taboos, such as against the eating of pork, which had been forbidden under Jewish dietary law, was abolished. Former feast days, fast days, were now feast days. One of the often quoted prayers of Zevi was, "Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who makes the forbidden things permissible." Sabbatai Zevi declared his duty was to descend through the gates of impurity into the impure realm of Kelipot, to rescue the divine sparks still imprisoned there. I don't understand that. I don't think it makes any sense, but that's what they teach. I've got a lot of quotes here because I'm quoting what they are saying. The Messiah was constrained to commit strange acts, masim zarim, which included apostasy, adultery, theft, idolatry, deception, covetousness. These may seem strange acts for the Messiah to perform, but you don't understand his real mission. His real mission is he's taking some divine sparks from basically from the pit of hell. All of these breaking of every law of God was necessary for the fulfillment of Messiah's mission. Did you understand the Messiah's job was to come and break every law? Well, that's the way the Kabbalists thought. The psychology of the Sabbateans is utterly paradoxical. Essentially, its guiding principle was, whoever is as he appears is not a true believer. In practice, it meant true faith cannot be the faith that men publicly profess. On the contrary, true faith must always be concealed. I mean, think, for example, the fact that you've got someone like Barack Hussein Obama who claimed to be a Christian. Although his minister was somebody who's, God damn America, chanting from the pulpit and so on. But he would claim to be a Christian because it's essential to claim to be a Christian if you want to get the vote to become president. Or Obama, or Biden, who claims to be a Roman Catholic. Although I don't know how many Roman Catholics would recognize him as a genuine Roman Catholic, but that's the way many of these people work. For a Sabbatean, it is their duty to deny their true faith outwardly, because it is seed planted in the bed of the soul. Seed cannot grow unless it's been covered over. I mean, you don't put your seed up on the table, you bury your seed in the dirt. So your real faith has to be buried in the dirt. It must be concealed. People must know what your real beliefs are. The theme of a secret, hidden, occultic identity became part of the Sabbatean religious philosophy. In essence, a true act cannot be committed publicly to be seen by the world. Like true faith, a true act must be concealed, because only through concealment could it negate the falsehood of what is explicit. Like this logic of this minister who claimed that the pornography is holy, it's a censorship that's blasphemy. I mean, if this doesn't make sense to any of you, don't worry, it just means you're sane. So through a revolution of values, what was formerly sacred becomes profane, and what was formerly profane becomes sacred. This is the paradoxical nature of the Kabbalah, and especially of the Sabbateans. The Bible says, Proverbs 99, a false witness will not go unpunished. He who speaks lies shall perish. But Sabbatai Zevi says you must speak lies. That's the essence of their faith. The Sabbatean sect which flourished during the lifetime of Sabbateanism, afterwards continued to indulge in wife-sharing, religious sex orgies, adultery, incest, all kinds of perversion. It is thought by some scholars that Zevi had deep connections with the Bektashi Sufi order of Islam. Some similarities through the Sabbatean Donmi and the Bektashi Sufi practice include deliberate violation of the Karish or Halal, and also ritualistic group sex, wife swapping, ecstatic singing, chanting mystical Kabbalah, belief in a hidden occultic meaning of the Torah and the Quran. I'm concerned we've got Christians who also have this idea that it doesn't matter what the text says in the Bible, there's some deep inner meaning underneath it all that nobody's seen for centuries. Well, whenever somebody comes up with some innovation theology, you know it's heresy. The Sabbateans in Salonika, which is what we know in the Bible as Thessalonica, regularly held a celebration on the 22nd day of the Hebrew month of Adar, known as the Festival of the Lamb. Now, this festival included getting drunk and extinguishing all the lights. And in total darkness, there was religious violations of the sanctity of marriage and incest, immorality, basically. They called this the Festival of the Lamb. Their teaching was that as a grain of wheat must rot in the earth before it can sprout, so the deeds of believers must become fully rotten before they can germinate in salvation. You've got to become rotten to become a true believer. That's what they're teaching. This conveys the Sabbatean theology in a nutshell. Salvation comes through sin. Redemption is achieved through deception. But the Word of God says in James 4 verse 4, adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity, hatred towards God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. How much clearer can it be? According to Gershom Scholem, Sabbateanism is the matrix of every significant movement that emerged in the 18th and the 19th century. Unless you understand Sabbateanism, you don't understand the roots of Freemasonry and Marxism. From Hasidism in Islam to Reform Judaism, to Freemasonry to Marxist revolutionary communism. When we speak about Reform Judaism would be as depicted by this cover. The Bible makes it clear that God hates tattoos. It's an abomination to him. You should not do body piercing. You should not meddle with what God has made. And in fact, in traditional Jewish culture, a Jew who has a tattoo cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery. But the Reformed Judaism, they flaunt their tattoos. According to the Torah, it's very clear that perversion, whether you talk about trans-dressing, cross-dressing, homosexuality, lesbianism, all that is forbidden. That's apostate, abomination. But in Reformed Judaism, they celebrate openly the gay and trans flags, and they will have some of the biggest gay and trans LGBTQ celebrations on earth in Tel Aviv. The homosexual lobby calls Tel Aviv the most gay-friendly city in the world. Now that's from Reformed Judaism. It's nothing like what we call Reformed in the Christian tradition. This is not going back to the Bible. This is more changing everything to something anti-biblical. And so this is the flag of Reformed Judaism. And of course Freemasonry is at the heart of the whole thing. You can see the Sabbatean movement controls the Freemasonry system. And there's a lot in it that you can see the symbolism that comes up in Sabbateanism, as you'll see later. These are all basic emblems, symbols for Freemasonry. And you can see these symbols coming up in, for example, the Academy Awards frequently. They'll have designs behind it, have many of these symbols in Academy Awards ceremonies. You can also see how they like to have the all-seeing eye as one of their symbols too. Now, the Young Turks, who seized the Ottoman Empire and initiated the massacres of the Armenian Christians in 1915, the Young Turks were almost certainly Sabbateans. You can just see from so much of what followed. It was part of overthrowing the kingdoms and subverting every religion on earth. So the Armenian massacre of Christians in 1915 and the wiping out of millions of Assyrians and Greek Christians between 1915 and 1922, done by the so-called Young Turks, it's almost certainly a Sabbatean operation. And there are books that document that. Sabbatean believers teach that they are the champions of a new world order. That is their phrase. And they've been using that phrase since the 17th century. A new world order, which will be established by overthrowing the values of every other religion and every other kingdom. They teach the holiness of sin. Everyone recognize this person? Who is this man? John Hagee. Now, John Hagee has famously taught, it is blasphemy for you as a Christian to share the gospel with a Jew. They are the people of God. They can't be evangelized. They don't need to be evangelized. They don't need to be saved. They are already the people of God. So you or I that have the audacity to share the gospel with a Jew are committing blasphemy. Does that make sense? Jesus is the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through him. We are deceived. We are lost. Jesus is the way. We are deceived. Jesus is the truth. We are dead in our trespass and sin. Jesus is the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. But if you share the gospel with a pagan, blaspheming, pornographer, baby killing, child trafficking, a person who happens to be a Jew, you're committing blasphemy because he's already a child of God. If you try to share the gospel with Karl Marx, you're guilty of blasphemy. He's already a child of God, according to John Hagee. They teach the holiness of sin. Now, 50 years after the death of Sabbatean Zevi, Jacob Frank was born. Interestingly enough, Sabbatean Zevi did not rise from the dead, but he was reincarnated in Jacob Frank 50 years later, apparently. Now, Jerry Rabbo, in his book The Untold Story of 50 Jewish Messiahs, reported Jacob Frank was the reincarnation of Sabbatean Zevi. Now, Jacob Frank continued and extended the paradoxical teachings of Sabbatean Zevi, declaring that with the coming of the Messianic age, Zevi had transformed all sexual prohibitions of the Bible into permissions and obligations. All the thou shalt nots in the Bible are now thou shalt. Make sense? The only way to purify the soul is through sexual immorality and orgies. Debauchery is therapy. If you want to understand a lot of what's going on in our psychological departments in the universities today, it's Sabbateanism. Debauchery is therapy. The best solution to any problem is just indulge in it. If it feels good, do it. Jacob Frank asserted, the God of the Bible is evil. Jews need to reject every moral law and every commandment. So now it's pretty plain. Sabbateanism is Antichrist. The God of the Bible is evil. That's what they teach. The only way to a new world order is through the total destruction of Christian civilization. Or should we say cancel culture, which today is cancelled Christianity. Jacob Frank insisted that child sacrifice, rape, incest, the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable and necessary religious rituals. Have you noticed how many people in Hollywood have admitted to the drinking of blood and things like that, and pledging their soul to Satan for getting great success, and musicians and you can see it in many of their themes. So once you understand Sabbateanism, so much of what looked to you completely insane suddenly makes sense when you understand this ideology. Salvation is through sin. Redemption is achieved through deception. But the Bible says in Proverbs 12 verse 22, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. Those who deal truthfully are his delight. Jacob Frank also convinced his followers the only way for the special form of Judaism, or Sabbateanism, to survive was for them to outwardly become Christians, just as the Donmi had descended into the world of Islam. The reality in Europe is either Protestant or Catholic. If you want to infiltrate and gain control and subvert every kingdom in Europe, you're going to have to pretend to be either Protestant or Catholic. Just as Sabbatean Zevi pretended to be Islamic in order to subvert the Ottoman Empire. The Jewish authorities in Poland excommunicated Frank. Let's give them credit for that. They had some backbone, more than the rabbis in Jerusalem who only threatened excommunication. And they excommunicated the followers of Frank. They rejected his concept of purification through transgression. Jacob Frank then converted to both Islam and Catholicism. He held annual springtime lamb festivals, which consist of drug use, sacrifice, nudity, the exchange of spouses and their daughters for immoral religious transgressions. I mean, it was just straight perversion. Frank preached that true Jewish believers were to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, mix the sacred with the profane, which I think Hollywood has been doing very effectively. I don't think you can understand Hollywood unless you understand Sabbateanism. Eve Frank, his daughter, was called the holy matron of the Sabbatean movement, and she formed a central figure in the immoral rituals of the sect in Poland. Jeremiah 17 verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Jacob Frank had approximately 50,000 disciples in his lifetime, mostly in Poland. But although his following was smaller than that of Sabbatean, Jacob Frank's cult would grow to become far more influential as it recruited some of Europe's most influential royalty, nobility, and the richest bankers on earth. Because who wouldn't want to join a religion that celebrates every kind of immorality? Gershom Scholem described Jacob Frank as one of the most frightening phenomena in the whole of Jewish history. A religious leader who, for whether purely selfish motives or otherwise, was in all his actions a truly corrupt and degenerate individual. Jacob Frank, reincarnation of Sabbateanism. Jacob Frank taught that one has to free oneself from all laws, all conventions, all religions, to adopt every conceivable attitude and to reject it, to follow their Messiah step by step into the abyss. The annihilation of every religion was the true way. This makes sense. Why would people say, there's no God, and I hate him, and we've got to destroy him? Why is there so much resistance to God from people who claim he doesn't exist? Why do they even give him attention? But the hatred of God and the desire to destroy him and remove him from universities and from classrooms, even primary schools, the campaign against God, against whether you're talking about putting up a nativity scene outside the town hall, a cross up on a hillside, the way how so many people like the Antichrist Lawsuit Union campaign against Christianity, if they don't believe in the existence of God, why do they spend so much time trying to fight against it? Because this is the Sabbatean way. In order to ascend, you must first descend. No one can climb a mountain unless he's first descended to the base. Therefore, he must descend and be cast down to the bottom rung, only then can he climb up to the infinite. This is the principle of what they call Jacob's ladder, which is shaped like a V, they say. I did not come into the world to lift you up, but rather to cast you down to the bottom of the abyss, says Jacob Frank. Jacob Frank taught an antinomianism, a hostility to God's law, rejection of all law, and he taught a libertinism, a rejection of all authority. Again, this makes sense where we are today in cancel culture. He demanded from his followers voluntary abasement and utter shamelessness. A Sabbatean needs to be able to commit every sin without any sense of shame, remorse, or guilt. Does this explain some of the skulls and bones secret ceremonies that you've got to go through in order to enter into the leadership of the CIA and all this? You understand just how they debase their students. I mean, what they do, public humiliation, urinating on their fellow students, I mean, all sorts of bizarre things. Why would they do that? It only makes sense if you understand Sabbateanism. Jacob Frank's Kabbalist interpretations led to nihilism, nothingness. He taught that you conquer through deception. Remember, you came from nothing. You're going nowhere. Life is meaningless. This is the heart and soul of the modern ethos being taught in our universities. Frank taught Israel's exile was not a consequence of its sins at all. Just part of the plan to bring about the destruction of all Gentiles throughout the world. So you might have thought God abandoned Israel and Jerusalem, for Jerusalem to be invaded and the temple to be destroyed, and all Hebrews to be sent into exile to Babylon or Assyria. You might have thought that was God's judgment on sin and idolatry. No, it was God's plan to destroy the Gentiles. To establish a Jewish state back in Palestine was not sufficient. The whole world order, especially the Christian Europe, needs to be subverted and destroyed. That's the goal. In his classic book, To Eliminate the Opiate, Rabbi Marvin Entelman revealed Jacob Frank got his financing from the Rothschild financial empire based in Frankfurt, and through his worldwide influence by his alliance with Adam Weishaupt, founder of the Illuminati. Now, Jacob Frank is the one we've been talking about, who claimed to be the reincarnation of the Messiah Sabbateanism, and also a reincarnation of the biblical patriarch Jacob. You all should know who Adam Weishaupt is. He was born to Jewish parents but raised as a Catholic. He's a Jesuit professor of canon law, church law, and he was the founder of the Order of the Illuminati, 1776. And then A.M. Rothschild was the wealthy German Jewish banker Amschel Meyer Rothschild, who was referred to the East European Jews as the pious Rothschild, because he also became a Sabbatean. And so when Jacob Frank entered Frankfurt, an alliance had already begun between Meyer Amschel Rothschild, the immensely wealthy banker of Frankfurt, and Adam Weishaupt, the son of a Jewish Kabbalist rabbi in Bavaria, and these formed the Illuminati. Educated by Jesuits, Weishaupt became a Roman Catholic priest, and then he formed an alliance with Meyer Rothschild. On the 1st of May, 1776, Weishaupt chose the timing of the launching of the Illuminati according to the Sabbatean Kabbalist teachings. He chose the 1st of May because May is the 5th month, added to the first day equals 6. He chose 1776 because the 4 numbers of the year add up to 21. 1 plus 7 plus 7 plus 6, 21. 21 is 1 plus 7 plus 7 plus 6, 21. That's 1776 to be added. And that's apparently super significant to them. Also, the sacred number 6 plus 21 equals 27, another number with occultist Kabbalist powers. They believe this because it's formed by multiplying 3 by 9. These are all numbers super significant to them. Now, Weishaupt carefully chose this date because he believed that even the greatest plans will be doomed to failure if not carried out at the most numerically advantageous time. Hence, just think of, 9/11, the significance and the importance of why they chose that particular time and so on. In the 18th century, Meyer Amschel Bauer, later Rothschild, adopted the hexagon, the 6-pointed star, as a symbol for his red shield. Rothschild means red shield. And so this hexagon, a red hexagon, was the Rothschild symbol. The 6-pointed star hexagon was adopted by the Rothschild family, put on their coat of arms. Meyer Amschel Bauer, who changed his name to Rothschild or Red Shield, lived between 1744 and 1812. He had 5 sons. Amschel Meyer remained in Frankfurt, established the bank in Frankfurt. Solomon Meyer settled in Vienna, Austria, controlled the Bank of Austria. Nathan Meyer settled in London and set up the Bank of England. And Karl Meyer settled in Naples, Italy, set up the Bank of Italy. And James Meyer settled in Paris, set up the Bank of France in 1812. Since the 17th century, the House of Rothschild has dominated the banking houses of Europe. And when I hear things like Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, I'm thinking, what a lot of nonsense. He can't possibly have more wealth than the Rothschilds, but they're trying to distract you from the Rothschilds. Somehow we've got this new wealth in, as though Elon Musk could exceed the wealth of the Rothschilds and so on, which is a blatant lie. Notice the hexagon also aligns with the Masonic symbols. And Washington, D.C. is laid out in Masonic lines. If you just look at a map of Washington, D.C., you can see it's a very clearly set out on Masonic lines. So, if you look at the Rothschild dynasty, it's quite clear some of the most influential people in history have come from their line. Nathan Rothschild was quoted as saying, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire in which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control Britain's money supply." In fact, the mother of this Rothschild said, "If my sons didn't want war, there wouldn't be any." Whoever controls the issues of money controls the government. Nathan Mayer Rothschild. Adam Weishaupt, Meyer Rothschild, and Jacob Frank launched the Illuminati on the 1st of May 1776 in Frankfurt, with the long-term political goals of Number 1, abolition of all monarchies and all governments. Number 2, abolition of private property and of inheritance. Number 3, abolition of nationalism. Number 4, abolition of the family and of the institution of marriage. Number 5, abolition of all religion. Number 6, establishment of compulsory communal education for all children. I think the sixth one we should be talking about indoctrination. It's not education. Education is teaching people how to think critically. What you've got today under your so-called Department of Education is teaching people what to think. Uncritical. Anyone who's read Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto of 1848 should immediately recognize this Illuminati agenda clearly articulated. The Illuminati's goals are the communist goals. And if you think of wokeism today, it's the same thing. Matthew 15:19 says, "For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies." And that is the Sabbatean movement. Now, from the Rothschilds and the Sabbateans have come the line that goes all the way down to Karl Marx and communism, and the line that goes through the Rothschilds to the creation of the State of Israel. And those are two of the arms of this operation. It is impossible to understand the present cancel culture, burn, loot, murder, BLM, gender confusion, lockdown lunacy, masquerade madness, COVID cult, salvation by vaccination, Christophobia, or the Hollywood degeneracy, indoctrination through education, mainstream media, the United Nations or the European Union, and their pronouncements and activities. How can you understand them without understanding the Sabbatean roots of the New World disorder? So much of what we shake our head at and say, these people are crazy, these people are stupid. Well, actually, maybe they're not crazy or stupid, maybe they're just evil. In many ways, Jeffrey Epstein epitomizes the Sabbatean religion. The weird cubic temple with its Islamic-type dome on Jeffrey Epstein's island, which reportedly leads down to an underground chamber, has been described as a rape dungeon and as a Luciferian temple. And they've got all kinds of bizarre things about it. And it's also been called Orgy Island, Little St. James. But intriguing, notice they've got access point for submarines to go into the island. They've got underground tunnels. Notice the owl on the top of this dome is the same owl from the Bohemian Grove. And Bill Clinton, of course, was a frequent flyer. I think he is a kind of a platinum diamond class frequent flyer on the Lolita Express, or the Pedo One as they call it. And how many of these other characters came there? Celebrities, billionaires, heads of state, royal figures, some of the most influential people in America, the Supreme Court, in your Senate, Congress, Hollywood, all came to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. Notice the building is painted with the blue and white stripes, which are the same colors as the flag of the State of Israel. And Jeffrey Epstein seemed to epitomize the Sabbatean philosophy of unrestrained sexual debauchery and deception. So too did the Hollywood producer, sexual predator and rapist Harvey Weinstein. Some of the most influential films of our lifetime being made by Harvey Weinstein. When I was forced to go to see the film Mandela Long Walk to Freedom to do a review for Ted Baer's movie guide, I didn't enjoy the film one bit, but I had to do it out of sense of duty. And it starts off with a Weinstein production. And then you've got all kinds of occultism, witchcraft, nudity, violence, and the occultism of Mandela being made to walk through the fire and being purified, as they call it, by the witch doctor, is at the beginning, the center, and the end of the film. Very prominent. But Weinstein has been promoting all the great idols of our age, and next thing people are shocked. The man's a sexual predator, a rapist. Well, that's what he celebrates in his films. Why would you be surprised that that's in their private life as well? When interviewed for the job of Labor Secretary, the former U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta said he had cut the non-prosecution deal with Epstein's attorneys because he'd been told, back off, Epstein's above his pay grade. Epstein belongs to intelligence. And leave this alone. Now, unsealed court documents and eyewitnesses confirm Bill Clinton was at Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island with minor girls repeatedly. And in the New York home of Epstein, the first thing you see is that picture on the left of Bill Clinton, previous president, dressed in Monica Lewinsky's dress with her high heels. And that's the first picture in the hallway. What's Epstein saying? It's like, I've got you, and he had an American president in his pocket. And here they're talking about the Bill Clinton snared in the pedophile ring, and don't blame the corrupt leaders for wanting to lead. Blame the followers that pay the taxes and follow the corrupt leaders. Interesting point. Do you blame these leaders as much as you blame the followers who enable them? Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein epitomize the Sabbatean cult and the whole Sabbatean religion. And look at the famous Hollywood stars who have been pals of these creeps. Really talk about Bill Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. These are some of the frequent flyers on the pedophile one. Hollywood and news media giants. These are the creeps who... Have you noticed with the Jeffrey Epstein and Elaine Maxwell trials, they don't come out with a list of who were the customers, who were the people committing all these hideous crimes with them. And normally that's one of the first things they should do. With Ghislaine Maxwell, they should have cut a deal with her. You reveal the customers and we will lower your charge. But somehow that never came up. So you can see the Department of Injustice is trying to conceal the matter. They're trying to protect people like Bill Gates, one of the most influential people in the world today, who was also a frequent flyer and a regular friend of Jeffrey Epstein. And all these people involved in the COVID cult. Bill Gates flew with Jeffrey Epstein on the Lolita Express, and his charity aims to empower young girls. And yet there he was with one of the worst human traffickers and pedophiles on the planet. Bill Gates repeatedly met with Jeffrey Epstein, even after Epstein was convicted of these child trafficking pedophile crimes. The amount of high-flying people worldwide, even going to the royal family, and it's a web of network. Now, was Jeffrey Epstein just serving Mossad and the CIA, blackmailing people that they could get them to vote the way they want or rule the way they want? Or was it more than that? And plainly, there's an intelligence aspect, but there's something more than that. And you can only understand when you understand the religion of Sabbateanism. Now, Jeffrey Epstein's main girlfriend or co-worker was Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was Mossad's super spy, and Robert Maxwell. Dead men tell no tales, spies, lies, and blackmail. The Maxwells were heavily involved in espionage, and Ghislaine Maxwell's father owned one of the biggest newspapers in England. And he just disappeared off a ship one day, and they said it must have been suicide. They've never found the body. Maxwell could be living in Israel for all we know, safely. He might have had a plastic surgery, face change. I mean, anything's possible. But the point is that Mossad and CIA are stamped all over these people. They're blackmailing people, bringing people to do all that the evil hearts desired, filming them. There's film cameras in every one of these rooms, and then they were able to blackmail them. Some churches have made statements like this: Jesus willingly died for you, unlike Epstein, who did not kill himself. There's books out documenting the shadowland of how, from Jeffrey Epstein to the Clintons, from Obama to Biden to the Occult elite, exposing the deep state actors at war with Christianity, at war with Donald Trump, at war with America's destiny. And, of course, Obama and the Clintons, both Bill and Hillary, very much friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and you can just see Jacob Frank and Sabbatean Zevi would be smiling on this sort of activity. Hollywood is riddled with Sabbateanism, and that's the only way you can understand some of these scripts. And the way how so much of Hollywood is a blasphemy industry. Why do they hate the name of Jesus Christ so much? Nobody's taken the name of Muhammad or Krishna or any of the other pagan false gods in vain. No, it's Jesus Christ that they're after. Jeremiah 9 verse 5 says, everyone will deceive his neighbor. and they will not speak the truth. They've taught their tongue to speak lies. They weary themselves to commit iniquity. And Hollywood has become the most creative at glamorizing sins that decent people always would have rejected, getting people to laugh at things that they would have before been disgusted with. I mean, this is Sabbateanism personified, is Hollywood. And as you can see, Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein are a massive presence in Hollywood, and you can tell from the body language of people who love them. I mean, Hillary and Harvey Weinstein, and she claims to care for women's rights. Well, Harvey Weinstein didn't respect women's rights. And Obama, well, he did say fundamentally change America. And then the amount of Hollywood, or what do we call them, stars, who threw themselves at Harvey Weinstein in order to enhance their careers. And it was well known, if you want to get a leading role, if you want to advance in Hollywood, you've got to sleep with Harvey Weinstein. Let him play out his perversions, and then you can advance in Hollywood. There were Hollywood Academy Awards where people would say, I want to thank God and Harvey Weinstein. And one person getting an Academy Award was told by a presenter, now you won't have to pretend that you like Harvey Weinstein anymore. And so it's an in-joke. They all knew. And then they all act horrified to discover, what, Harvey Weinstein's a serial rapist, pedophile, predator? Who would have guessed? Well, they all knew. It was no secret. And as for Oprah Winfrey, she's been a trafficker of little girls to Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, house of them all. And she's been a trusted name in many American homes, but she's been used to channel youngsters to Harvey Weinstein and to Jeffrey Epstein. Understanding Sabbateanism helps you understand the times and understand the threat that confronts us. 2 Peter 2 verse 19 could be written across them all. While they promise them freedom, they themselves are slaves of depravity. And this you could write across just about every government in Africa as well. They promise freedom and liberty, but they themselves are slaves of corruption. Isaiah 59 verse 14. Justice is turned back. Righteousness stands afar off. For truth is fallen in the street. Equity cannot enter. So truth fails. And he who departs from evil makes himself a prey. Have you noticed? Anyone who departs from evil makes himself a prey. Just think of some poor soul like Mel Gibson. He makes a film to honor Christ, like the Passion of Christ. And Hollywood hates him. He's committed the unforgivable sin. They protect their own, but they hate an apostate. And Mel Gibson's an apostate. He was part of Hollywood, and he's turned against him. So I hate him. He has committed apostasy and heresy and blasphemy against the Sabbatean cult. This is a nation that does not obey the voice of the Lord, their God, nor receive correction. Truth has perished and has been cut off from their mouth. Jeremiah 7:28. And war broke out in heaven. That serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. If you ever get the impression that, well, the whole world can't be wrong, but the Bible says the whole world is being deceived by Satan. We are taught in Revelation 12:9, Satan who deceives the whole world. How clear is that? If you find yourself in agreement with the world, Hollywood, the United Nations, the mass media, then you're deceived. We've got to know, if we're in agreement with the world, we are definitely being deceived. The spirit of this age has blinded many minds. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 4, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. 2 Timothy 4 verse 3, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, false teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. Do you see this working out in our churches today? 2 Corinthians 11 verse 3, but I fear lest somehow, as the servant deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. Revelation 20 verse 1 to 3, then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and he cast him to the bottomless pit, and shut him up and set a seal on him, so that he might deceive the nations no more. How much clearer can God make it? Nations are being deceived today. Galatians 1 verse 10. For do I now persuade men, or God, or do I seek to please men? For if I still pleased men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. People pleasers make traitors. Our job is not to please man. Our job is to fear and to please God. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. You can see, whether you're talking about Facebook, Google, suppressing the truth, you can see the fact checkers, the enemies of truth, the thought police, who prosecuting thought crimes. You're not allowed to think that. You can't say that. Isn't it amazing? The same people who said you can't suppress child pornography from the internet, those same people, they managed to suppress everything that the Chinese government doesn't want from entering China, the Great Firewall of China. And they can scrub ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine off the internet so fast within seconds of you uploading it, but they can't deal with child porn. I mean, you can see where these people are. They suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will make a stand for me against the workers of iniquity? The word of God challenges us all. Psalm 94 verse 16. Who will rise up? Who will stand up? Who will speak out? Who will fight the good fight of faith? Our job is to smash Marxism. At its heart, Sabbateanism's political expression is communism. Communism is seen in our universities as cancel culture or cancel Christianity. Our job is to fight at the very heart of this. Now, I've produced a newsletter that's available on our website, which has got all the text I've given here. 1666 in the Sabbatean Roots of New World Disorder. It's on the gospeldefenseleague.org.za website. You can also see videos and audios of it on sermon audio on the Frontline Fellowship website, frontlinemissionsa.org. So if you want to access this newsletter, or which I'm sorry I don't have to give out here because they've all been distributed already, but you can download them, frontlinemissionsa.org, or get the audio and the video. We also do regularly From the Frontline podcast each week, and you can tune in there for definitely politically incorrect content. I've got some of our newsletters here, but very few, but you can get them online, and they're always picture-rich. I've got some of our books here today. A number of our books are now available on print on demand anywhere in the world, or e-books, because of the difficulty of distribution. The main problem being the South African Postal Service has collapsed. They're going to build back better, I guess, but right now they've broken it down. Yeah, well, build back better. Any questions at all? Questions, comments, complaints, criticisms? I've thrown a lot at you. Questions? You mean the number? They love certain numbers and certain dates. So, for example, historic dates. The September the 11th. September the 11th in history, that was when the Great Siege of Malta ended. One of the worst defeats of Islam in history. September the 11th in 1565. The defeat of the Ottoman Empire, the high point of the Ottoman Empire, the invasion of Europe, and the Great Siege of Vienna at the heart of Europe was lifted on September the 11th in 1683. And so, interesting that September 11th, which marked a great defeat of Islam, was chosen as a date for that September. September 11th, and other people pointed out, 9/11 as well, and you've got 9th month, you dial 911, and then the two powers are like 11, and then even the flight numbers, there was a flight 11, there's another flight 11, just extraordinary the amount of numerology that you start to play around with that event. Pivotal events have very important numerological significance, and that just shows the fingerprints of these characters of the Sabbateans. They like to leave their fingerprints in terms of dates and numbers. Any other comments?
Yes. So you were showing the picture of all the Hollywood elites, etc. Are they formally would they formally call themselves practitioners of Sabbateanism, or
not necessarily, but they all were friends of Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, what I guess I'm getting to is there some type of a hierarchy that or organization that where these politicians and influencers would be a part of?
I think so. So, for example, the Bohemian Grove is where a whole lot of these characters and presidents go. Interestingly, Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan are the only presidents you've had who didn't go to the Bohemian Grove Club in the last 80-odd years. That's some other piece of information that I was given, which is intriguing. But there's also the Illuminati and the Council on Foreign Relations. They would have a hierarchy. I think the Sabbatean movement works through fronts. And Hollywood, I mean, even, have you looked at all the occultic symbolism of the Academy Awards? They've got the gold statues like these old idols, and it's symbolic of the idol of prosperity and so on. Even a lot of the decor of Hollywood, some people have done documentary films showing how occultic the whole thing is, but the very symbolism, handing a gold idol to somebody for Academy Award, this is the internal structure of rewarding those who are bringing out LGBTQ themed films or attacking Christianity, undermining things. They've got their way there. But Illuminati's got, and Freemasonry have got their own structures, and then they've got all these different levels. Now, for example, Nelson Mandela was a 34-degree Mason, and there's a lot of Freemasons who way low down the totem pole, but the ones at the very top, they get quite a lot of acknowledgement. And in South Africa, we've got a version of the Illuminati called the Broederbond, and the Broederbond is an Afrikaans version of that. Now, the funny thing is, you can see the fingerprints. All of these people, as Sabbateans, they will be involved in occultism and child abuse. So pedophilia and perversion goes along fingerprints of these whole characters. You can see, and they're super successful. They will help one another, very wealthy and so on. But yeah, no, the pictures there were the people who have overtly identified with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
But considering how he's like a high priest of Sabbateanism, people going there for occultic ceremonies. They've got underground tunnels and underground rape dungeons. It's hideous to think these things are possible, but we have a world that's being run by occultic child abusers.
I heard that there were airplanes that had some kind of ovens or something in there where everyone would be in a plane on a flight. It's so hard to detect and see that stuff because it's all in the air. And when they're done with the girl, they would just incinerate the girl right there in the airplane because there's no trail, paper trail or visible trail to someone who goes in there and then just gets killed right there after being used and abused. Is that true?
I would not know that, but interesting enough, there's a book out called The Secret War by Max Hastings, which is the Second World War understood from the intelligence agencies, and they found as the Second World War began, for example, the German police in Berlin took over the Soviet embassy. And in the Soviet embassy, they found crematoriums in the embassy. They had torture cells, soundproof torture cells. The amount of things they found there, absolute criminal enterprise. And whenever one's gone to a Soviet embassy during the Cold War, they've had all kinds of weird things, including crematoriums. So I don't know about aircraft, but but it's been proven they had them in Soviet embassies.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if bizarre things like that happen. What goes on in Hollywood is mind-boggling. We've never been given a real tour of what was and is on this little St. James. What's this Virgin Islands? Jeffrey Epstein's Peter Island. Where's 60 Minutes or something doing a full expose on what's on the island? Hollywood doesn't even want to look there. And when Jim Caviezel came out to that film Sound of Freedom on human trafficking, he was being shot down as a conspiracy theorist. But it's a true story. It's a real person, real instance. there's no conspiracy theory at all. They do these things, and the fact that island, I saw some media saying that Sound of Freedom puts forward the theory that the world is being run by occultic pedophiles. I thought, well, they don't say that expressly in a film, but that certainly is pretty close to the truth, is it not?
Go back to what Brother Stan asked. So, when you think about the Bohemian Grove, Davos, and all of these people belong to the same thing, is what it amounts to. And of course, I don't know how many saw the recent videos where they found the tunnel underneath, what was it, the synagogue in New York there, where people were popping out even on the sidewalk from underneath, and they found the tunnels, and there were all kind of children's stuff down there. All of that was this was just in the last month. There is also a documentary you can check out. It says, where are all the children? And there's about 300,000 illegal immigrant children that have gone missing, and they're pointing out the fact our own government has been trafficking the children as well. In fact, Sheriff Grady Judd down in Florida arrested 2 illegal immigrants, and then they confessed up front that they were prostitutes, but they were working for our government, and our government was paying their way. Before the week was over, he had arrested 21 with the same story. You can check it out on the internet. He's making the statement. He now has the CIA agent, a woman, who is behind all of this sex trafficking. So our own government is doing this. And the point that I really got out of this is, if you wonder why a Christian cannot make any headway in Washington, D.C., this is because we are an alien religion. They have their own religion, and their religion goes back. So even in Bible studies, I've taught about Gnosticism and the Docetic Gnostics and all of this. And what we see today in our religion and what is happening is the old heresy. Is nothing has changed. It's just changed names and changed faces. That's why when he mentioned Mel Gibson came out and said in black and white that in Hollywood they drink the blood of children. And so adrenochrome, I think that's what it's called. And so it's almost impossible to make any changes. I've preached messages, and I've heard people say, well, I wish you could preach that to Congress. I said, well, so do I, but it wouldn't do a bit of good unless God just simply intervened. But this is where we are. This is pure paganism, is what it amounts to. And they haven't changed one whit.
Any other questions, comments, complaints, criticism? You see, I'm Baptist. I've got everything in C's.
I got a couple of things.
Yeah.
Kind of going in with what both of you were stating. So our city brought in a guy to speak who claimed to be a 33rd degree Mason. And he, just to our investigators, and we've heard of MK Ultra mind control, willingly taught it, put it in his book. And what's odd, they don't hide it anymore. So they don't try to cover up this stuff because I think we're so indoctrinated and dumbed down to recognize these things. But he brought a porn star with him to teach the class. And of course, some guys that were involved in watching porn actually recognized her. And she admitted, yeah, that's me. And this is how level, how strong the deception is. But they were teaching our investigators how to use MK Ultra and mind control techniques. And he brought a book that he had published, and it's all in there. So I didn't go to the class. A friend of mine who was awake to all this stuff, another fellow Christian, he was sending me pictures of the book and the stuff they were putting up while they were teaching, because he was an investigator for us. So this is how strong these ties are in our land at every level. The second thing I was going to ask you about was 1776, because there's mixed emotions about all that and the formation of our country and how all these Masonic.
I went to the new Sons of Confederate Veterans Museum, and unfortunately, there's a real big display of Masonic, symbolism there. How much did that play into the creation of this country?
Well, it seems an awful coincidence. 1776 coincides with the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, which of course we'd generally be all sympathetic and positive about. But here, the people came here, pilgrims and Puritans, trying to escape from all that was going on in Europe, especially the wars and the oppression, and it looks like it's even worse here now than it was in Europe where they fled from. So the good intentions of your founding fathers, the pilgrims, was violated somewhere along the line, and the whole system was hijacked. Because America is now one of the most important parts of the New World Order. We try to break away from the wickedness of the Old World Order, but now, just take for example, America used to be a land of the free. Less regulation. Now you need to get a permit for everything, fishing and whatever. And you've got to get a marriage license from the state. Since when has marriage got anything to do with the state? It's always been between the family and before God and the family. That's it. What's it got to do with the state? And so many things the state has gotten involved into. To think you've got to get a license for something that you used to have a right to do. My father-in-law, Bill Bathman, he is from Tennessee. He said during the Second World War he was driving trucks. And he was 12, 14, 15 years old. He was driving trucks. I said, how do you get a license at age 12? And he said, we didn't have licenses. You drove if you could drive, and you get pulled over if you were driving badly or recklessly. And the fact of gun licenses. When our foot trekkers went on the Great Trek, I'm pretty sure they didn't have gun licenses, and they even carried cannon with them, and as they used at the Battle of Blood River. So, who was getting licenses? What has happened now that we've got to get licenses from the state? Our people fled to South Africa to get away from the persecution in Europe, and your people fled from Europe. And now, sadly, South Africa is a creation of the New World Order, present government, and it's basically a guinea pig for a lot of the New World Order goals. And the United States is a key player in the New World Order. So I think somewhere along the line, your government got completely hijacked. And I understand why the Confederates want to break away from it, because the Feds were evil. And there's a very good sermon by George Grant, Lincoln and Lennon. You can get on sermon audio. George Grant shows the similarities between Abraham Lincoln and Vladimir Lenin, both of whom saved the Union, fought civil wars against the South in both cases, and are idolized to this day, whether you're talking about the Lenin Mausoleum at the Kremlin or you're talking about the Lincoln Memorial in the Mall. But the idolizing of these two men who were failures in life and whose only claim to fame is that they saved their unions and established much more centralized governments. But George Grant does it much better than I do. Well worth listening. Lincoln and Lennon. I told him he should produce a book, but there is a sermon audio on it.
Is the Unitarian Church connected to this?
I think they must be a spin-off because, yes, they've got a lot of similar kinds of goals. Even the idea that people are basically good. Well, Jesus made it pretty good. No one is good except God alone. So any church that's based on a business that people are basically good. I mean, the Sabbatean idea is that everything is good, including debauchery, pornography, evil, and that the only thing that's blasphemous is us who are trying to censor them or restrict them. I couldn't believe it when I was debating at Germany, telling me that pornography is holy and censorship is blasphemy. I mean, that is Sabbatean mindlessness. That's where these people stand. And you notice they're so much without shame. There's no sense of guilt. There's no sense of... They are proud of what they do because they're taught to be proud. You're not meant to have any sense of shame as you break all of God's commands. And that is... I mean, Sabbateanism, paganism, I mean, that is... It's just raw rebellion to God and a sense of pride in being rebellious against God.
Who killed Epstein?
Yeah, no, indeed.
Who killed him?
Who killed Epstein? Well, I've got a few theories on it, and my most likely is I think Epstein's alive in Israel today.
Oh, okay. All right.
There might be some other body, but like Robert Maxwell, his father-in-law, not father-in-law, I mean, his girlfriend's father. He never married Ghislaine. But Robert Maxwell, that kind of suicide, where there's no body, he probably didn't commit suicide, he probably is not even dead. He's Mossad super spy, and at one point, considering they control so many of the world's governments, why did they need the State of Israel? Well, the way it's been explained to me by Stephen Goodson. Stephen Mitford Goodson was the South African director of the Southern Reserve Bank. He died in mysterious circumstances a few years ago. I did his funeral. He was a good friend, regularly spoke about Reformation studies. Stephen Mitford Goodson wrote the book Inside the South African Reserve Bank. And he's written books like A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind. I always thought wars are caused by geopolitical kind of ideologies and things like this. He said wars are basically bankers' wars. I've never seen the economic side of it, but he looks at history through the lens of the bankers. And amongst his different statements were, the Federal Reserve Bank is not federal, it has no reserves, and it's not a bank. And he said state capture in South Africa started with General Smuts opening up the Southern Reserve Bank, which is a Rothschild bank. Well, what he had to say was that the State of Israel is primarily a safe state where pedophiles can flee, and that a place where there's no extradition, where you can go, where a person like Jeffrey Epstein can spend the rest of his days in safety, and Robert Maxwell and so on. And that's an interesting perspective, but he's looking at everything economically. And just think of the benefits the State of Israel has given the military-industrial complex. The backwater of the Middle East, which was asleep, calm, and nothing much was going on there for centuries, has now become the hotbed of war and revolution, and so many wars and so much weapons you've got to supply from different sides. It's a destabilizing influence in the Middle East. Just throwing the cat amongst the pigeons, throwing this Jewish state in the middle of the Middle East has created no end of chaos, and to the benefit of these who get rich on the military-industrial complex. Now, that's not my view, that's the view of Stephen Mitford Goodson, who's an economist of higher order. If anyone ever wants to see an economist book like History of Central Banking and Enslavement of Mankind, it really gives you a totally different perspective of wars. Just sheer coincidence. What does pre-Second World War Germany, Japan, Italy, recent Libya, Syria, Iran have in common? None of them have a Rothschild bank. It's obviously complete coincidence, but basically wars are bankers' wars in many cases. A country like Libya that was going on to gold dinars and not trading in US dollars, it's got to be destroyed. And there's a lot of pretensions that the media may give, or Iraq didn't have a Rothschild bank, and got to be destroyed.
Let me add something to the question that he asked. Everybody hears about the 49ers, and of course that's the men who went to Sutter's Mill, gold rush in 1849 in California. But there's also a group called the 48ers, and that's where the Marxists came over from Germany and settled here in this America. And Donnie Kennedy and Al Vinson has written an entire book, and the title is Red Republicans and Marxists in Lincoln's Cabinet. So they influenced Lincoln, worked with Lincoln, and some were his generals, by the way. And so they had a great influence on Lincoln. And a lot of things that Lincoln did was just, well, he destroyed our Constitution, is what it amounted to. He destroyed the land and turned it into an empire. So, but it's all documented in that book and in plenty of other places as well.
I've got a few books along that line. Lincoln Uber Alles is one, and Lincoln's Marxist is another, and then there's another one on the real Lincoln.
Yeah.
But Lincoln's Marxist speaks about what happened in 1848. 1848, the Marxist manifesto came out. Marxist revolutions broke out in every capital of Europe. They all failed, and most of the 48ers got guillotined, shot, hung, or whatever they did with revolutionaries in Europe. And the survivors fled to America and formed the Republican Party, the 1848ers, which is why the Republicans have the red tie. Now, I know they're more conservative now, they've changed directions, but that's the origin of the Red Republicans. The Red Republicans were basically Marxists who had fled from justice in Europe and were coming here, and that's why there were so many atrocities against the Southerners because they were seen as, you're the bourgeois landowners,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
got to die. And so that's why many of the 48ers who were Lincoln's generals were burning, looting, desecrating churches, murdering civilians, Sherman's march to George the Whole lot. And Lincoln did not punish any of them. He
Right.
promoted them.
Promoted.
Promote these men. Now these are men who are nothing but war criminals. And there were 48ers, they were European revolutionaries with an axe to grind who took it out on the plantation owners of the South. And the 48ers, so Lincoln's Marxists, have got pictures, details,
Yeah.
documents, absolutely staggering, going through the 48ers. I mean, and that explains the origins of why the Republican Party started out so revolutionary. Now, it has changed colour a bit since then, but nevertheless, it just explains a lot. That was their roots.
The three books, two of which he mentioned, two of them are written by Thomas de Lorenzo, The Real Lincoln and Lincoln Unmasked. I have both of them in the library, but they're devastating as far as revealing what Lincoln really was. And there's a third book titled The Real Lincoln as well, but it was written by Charles Minor, and I have that book in the library as well. But the two most prominent ones now are written by Thomas de Lorenzo, and he doesn't pull any punches. I mean, it's plain and obvious, and he documents everything. Those are excellent books. Auburn?
Does any of what you presented have to do with millennialism, premillennialism, that type of thing, which became the prominent Christian viewpoint of eschatology around 1800?
Well, of course, there's historic premillennialism, which was very respected, but the premill, pre-trib dispensationalism, that dates back to a Rothschilds-funded Bible, the first study Bible, which was the Schofield Bible, and that brought in the gap theory and a whole lot of bizarre things, and included, it was sponsored by the Rothschilds, and you can see a lot of, it basically gives the idea that there has to be a rebuilt temple, a rebuilt Jerusalem, and it opened the way to the fact that all Christians must support the State of Israel. Even though God abandoned Israel twice, I mean, showing you don't get a blank check to anyone. I mean, I did a project, which I've got here, Old Testament survey. I preached every book in the Old Testament, summarizing it in a chapter, and sermon on sermon audio, and then New Testament survey. But going through the Old Testament survey, I could not help but notice every single prophet, bar no exceptions, condemned Israel for immorality, idolatry, ingratitude, interfaith, a whole lot of evil eyes, and none of them gave Israel a blank check, and God abandoned Israel to be destroyed and sent into exile twice as a result of the warnings that they violated. And now today you've got people saying you've got to give Israel a blank check. And your blessedness on this earth and in eternity depends on whether you support a political state. Even though that political state murders babies. In fact, we've had the head of the pro-life movement of Israel in our mission house, and she says, the State of Israel has killed more Jewish children than the Nazis. And this is someone who didn't question whatever statistics given that they've got legalized homosexuality, prostitution, pornography. They're a nation that's not Christian, it's not even Jewish in a biblical sense. They don't worship the God of that Moses worshipped. They don't worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They are a secular state which is extremely immoral, and their foreign affairs organizes adverts and campaigns to go around the world to the homosexual community. Come to Tel Aviv, the most gay-friendly city in the world. What do you think the prophets would say? And yet you've got people today saying, you've got to support the State of Israel. And they quote from Genesis 12, verse 1. But we read in Galatians 3, to Abraham and his seed, not to seeds as to many, but to one seed, which is Christ. So the promise to Abraham, those who bless you will be blessed, those who curse you will be cursed, is a Messianic prophecy. If you are blessed or cursed in relationship to your relationship to Christ. And to have taken that and made that you are blessed or cursed in relation to how you respond to a political state that persecutes Christians and which is involved in promoting homosexuality and perversion, is insane. But Galatians makes it clear, it's to Abraham and his seed. not to seeds as to many, but to one seed, which is Christ. How much clearer can it be? You have to interpret the prophecy given to Abraham as a Messianic prophecy. And yet I got so much criticism for that, those chapters dealing with the Old Testament survey, showing what the Bible says. Because, for example, when I just took from Zephaniah the fountain that brings blessings to nations, and I had people criticizing me, but Israel is the fountain that brings blessings to nations. And I had the audacity to say, it's Jesus Christ who's the fountain that brings blessings to nations. And there were Christians cursing me for seeking to glorify Christ and show Jesus is the fulfillment of that prophecy. Imagine thinking that a political state, a secular state that persecutes Christians, is a fountain that brings blessings to nations. But this is how far we have gone now, that we're being attacked on this level. So yes, the state of Israel, it's a political entity, and I think it's got absolutely no relevance to Christianity, and I think it's got no relevance to our understanding of the end times. And these people are obsessed that whatever's going on in Israel is determining what's going to happen in the end times. To me, there's one prophecy that shows when Jesus is going to come. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world for witness to all mankind. Then the end will come. Now, when the gospel has been fully preached, when all nations have been discipled, when the Great Commission is fulfilled, the Lord will return, and not before. I think Israel is irrelevant to the prophetic time clock. The important thing is, when we have fulfilled the Great Commission, only then can we expect the Lord to return. And we should be ready every moment of every day, because the Lord could come or call, in a sense that, if you or I die in a car accident or in a hail of bullets, and as our brother says, if this is my last day, may I die surrounded by shell casings, I want to go down fighting. Yeah, but if the Lord calls us, we need to be ready at a moment's notice. And we could die of a heart attack or stroke or whatever could happen any moment. So we need to be ready. But realistically, you cannot expect the Lord to come until the church has collectively fulfilled the Great Commission and the world is thoroughly evangelized and discipled. That's the fulfillment of prophecy. And these Schofield-sponsored, these Bibles that Rothschild sponsored for Schofield, which are beautiful, leather-bound and thumb-indexed and gilt-edged and all the rest, there's a lot of money behind Schofield. But it prepared the church for this unquestioning, slavish, idolatrous support of a political state in the Middle East.
Now, I've heard that too, that Rothschild financed C.I. Schofield, but I've never seen any actual documentation of it. Is there anything out there?
I've got the book, The Incredible Schofield.
Yeah, The Incredible Schofield.
So that explains it. The Incredible Schofield. And Schofield went through, was it 4 wives?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least 2 at the same time.
I mean, it obviously wasn't until death do us part, but until the rapture do us part, and that's so close in advance that, he couldn't be blamed that when it was getting to this business of, gee, the Lord's still not come, it's time for me to change wives, and he obviously didn't quite have this long-term view, and there's another couple of those characters. Who was the one who wrote 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming in 1988?
Schofield got his information from, who was the Plymouth Brethren?
Yes.
Darby.
Darby, John Nelson Darby.
Yeah.
And John Nelson Darby got it from Margaret MacDonald, who was a tongue-speaking prophetess. There is a
young teenager.
That's where he got his theology from. There is a book. Originally, it was entitled "The Unbelievable Origin of the Pre-Trib Rapture Theory." Then it's been redone, and it's got another title now. I think it's just The Incredible, Story, etc. But you're talking about Schofield. And like you said, Schofield left his wife and child. He was a lawyer, married another woman, never divorced his wife, never supported his wife after he married another woman or his child.
Isn't that bigamy?
Yeah, it's bigamy. But you'll find all that information documented in The Incredible Schofield. Yeah.
I think that's the problem. The church keeps rejecting the scriptures,
Yeah.
and that's how they brought in Schofield and everything, because who you bring in to be your minister, if you rejected what the scriptures teach on who can be our minister, who can be an elder of the faith, if you reject that, then you're bound to bring in countless doctors, the Pharisee, and everything else.
Indeed. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. So, going back to basically the religion of
Sabbateanism.
Sabbateanism, their main means of evangelism is through debauchery.
Yes.
So that would be through social media, Hollywood,
Especially Hollywood, yeah.
political leadership, and the education system, what we call the education system.
Yeah, indoctrination.
So thinking about young parents, the best that they can do, or the best plan for them, is to severely limit probably social media. What I guess I'm getting at is what do you see as a process for us to fight?
Yes. So the best thing we can do to resist and rebel against New World Order is be straight, get married, have lots of children, homeschool, and throw out the TV set. So best decisions my wife and I ever made: no TV, homeschooling. Now social media can be used for evangelism and discipleship, and we do use it vigorously. Social media is not all equal. Some is used for evil, but Hollywood is distinctly evil. So I think there are some good films being produced by good Christians. You know, praise God for the Kendrick brothers and great films they produce and so on. But while we may have need for a DVD player, we don't have need for TV in the sense of we don't want anything from Hollywood. Hollywood is debauched. So if you will not have a TV set, if you will home educate, if you will be straight and get married and have children, that's the best rebellion to New World Order. They want us to go extinct. And so being straight and getting married is definitely the most counter-revolutionary thing to do. Tracy?
How do we pray in the spiritual warfare regarding imprecatory prayers daily with the family?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. We need to get back to Psalms. The Psalms have many imprecations. I think 90 of the 150 Psalms are imprecatory prayers or include imprecatory Psalms. Praying the Psalms, praying for God's justice, praying for God to judge the wicked, to destroy the wicked, to break the arm of the wicked and evil man, that he may do his evil no more, to break the teeth in their mouth, O Lord. You know, may they wither away, may they disappear like water into the soil. And there's so many prayers against the wicked, against the evil, that they may not prosper. We should be involved in the War Psalms of the Prince of Peace, which is the name of an excellent book expounding the imprecatory Psalms. I think that's what brings a lot of joy and comfort to us. I've seen too many horrific things in my ministry to the persecuted church, worked in 38 countries and been involved in 8 wars, and walked in churches filled with corpses like in Rwanda. I've seen too many atrocities. What keeps me sane is praying the Psalms, praying for God to judge the wicked, and rejoicing in the fact that the day will come when the earth will be as full of the knowledge of the glory of God as seas full of water, when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Through our God we shall do valiantly. It is He who will tread down our enemies. So, praying the Psalms, praying against evil, praying for God to judge the wicked, to frustrate their plans, to confound their plans, to cause them to fall to the trap they've set for others, for them to be condemned by the words of their own mouths. There's so many great imprecatory Psalms. So yes, I think that's an important focus. That's the artillery support we need in this war. The battles we win on the ground are first won on knees in prayer. So back to the Psalms. That's what Martin Luther always recommended. Pray the Psalms.
There's a wonderful psalm in Psalm 9, I think it is, where the psalmist said, "Oh, let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish thou the just." And so it's legal, lawful, and right to pray that. But as he pointed out, David was more specific. David would say, "Cast them down that they rise not up again. Break their teeth in their mouth, O Lord." And of course I pray, and I think this would be a lawful prayer as well, "Lord, take away their money and their power, and give it to someone who will use it for your honor, your glory, and your kingdom." Because that's how they're staying right now. They've got the money, they've got the power. But when God takes it away, they're nothing.
Yeah.